Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Um, I just want to check with Ezekiel to see if he is set.
All right.
Hi, Vice Chair and members of the committee. Oh, it's down here. Hi, Vice Chair and members of the committee. I just have one more score to finish up, and I'll be ready in the next couple of minutes.
Okay. But in the meantime, let's talk about the next agenda item, which is to discuss, review, and finalize the ranking and develop the priority listing. So welcome back. As a reminder, this is being recorded and live streamed. The committee will now have an opportunity to debrief on the interviews that have taken place so far, yesterday and today. And please remember to keep your comments to what has been presented and on the application only. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the floor and to see if anyone has any comments. Now I can see from my perspective, there's definitely a lot of need out there, Dee Dee, coming out of COVID. You could just hear that in pretty much every single applicant talking about the need, especially coming out of COVID, that there is a lot of pent-up demand, honestly, coming from these services, and that just the need is there. So I'm glad we do have that extra funding for the most part to do this, because this would be a very difficult decision if we did not have all that particular funding. But I think we did have great presentations throughout yesterday and today. Anyone else have any other comments?
Hey, Matt, this is Nate. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of good presentations this year. I think everybody did a really good job. Nobody seemed, kind of overwhelmed or anything, which is good. One of the thoughts I had was, I was a little concerned about the preventative maintenance and the actual cost of that. I think some of the applicants, I'm not sure if they really know yet what those increases in cost for PM will be. But to your point, I mean, that's a good thing that we have extra money this year. So hopefully they did a good job of calculating that out and what they really need. But that's just my only thought. True.
Yeah. With those PM, and it seems like most of them had an increased cost in the PM. Some of them said they were okay, but as we go forward with the supply chain and everything that's happened, not only nationally, but internationally, it's going to be interesting to see what those PM costs come in. And even the vehicles too. I know, Wendy, you do a great job over there. It's all these unknowns. You hear vehicles all the time and the increase in cost. So we'll see what happens there.
Hey, this is Nancy.
Hey, Nancy.
Hey. Kind of on that same note, the new vehicles request, again, I show some concern just because they'll have new vehicles, but are they going to be able to make sure that they have enough drivers to utilize them and put them to good use? And so that's kind of what my concern was for the vehicles.
Yeah, good point. And I think we'll be able to see kind of like going into next year. I think that's one of the things we're want to keep an eye on next year is these vehicle requests, especially for expansion. Are they utilizing these vehicles to the best of their ability?
Chair, Vice Chair, Dee Dee, members of the committee, this is Wendy Miller. I can give you a little bit of thought on that in terms of that is something, as you even heard, the city of Phoenix is struggling with their contractors. So I do not, as the DR, really have a concern on that from an FTA perspective, because we need to try to be able to make sure that we're spending down the funds and giving out eligible projects, the opportunity to provide that service. And in COVID, lots of fleet were parked due to no fault of their own. It's a pandemic. There's, you know what I'm saying? So driver shortages and things, that's not something that they can combat. But if they are able to get drivers and they are able to provide those services, I don't think holding back funding vehicles in for something they can't control is a concern. But not that we don't have that concern. Of course, we want them to, you know, run service and provide that. And I know that MAG and some of the mobility managers and some of the folks can work on, you know, what other creative ways can we do to attract drivers, or we could have those, you know, discussions and you know, combat any of the issues that we have. But that isn't a concern for me. In terms of to comment also on the PM comment, yes, we don't know where all these things are going to come in. And even again, during the pandemic, they weren't running that service. So things were down. Now that they're putting that back up, you know, their services are back in, most of them are back in close to full service, if or, you know, more than it was during the pandemic. They're spending those down, but the costs are higher, et cetera. So we're just going to have to do our best at, you know, giving them what they need. If they are a little overshooting in their PM costs, I know that was a question that one of our agencies, we asked them in terms of, you know, you have a really high percentage of what you're asking for versus the rest of the agencies. But what we don't know is, are those other agencies under asking? We don't really have a standard cost for PM. And the City of Phoenix, as the DR, we're doing some research and asking those questions from our contractors and our operations staff to help us give our subrecipients a better guideline of what things should be costing and where things are at, so that we know when we're making those decisions for funding in the future that we are more informed. And we're planning on giving more detail, hopefully in the future, in our guidebook, et cetera, on expanding ways that they can use PM and being more inclusive, because of the amount of funding that we do now start to have, that everybody's using that to their best ability. And at times, you know, anyway, I feel like I'm going on and on, but that's basically what I'm thinking in terms of the PM costs. And the vehicles, there's nothing we can do about that. One other request that I would make is that even if we have, let's say that, you know, we did an estimate of, I can't remember off the top of my head what our estimate was in terms of the cost of the vehicle, but if our actuals come back higher than that, since we do have excess funding, I would like the committee to be aware and be supportive of that. We could actually fund more to cover the cost of a more expensive vehicle if the city finds themselves in that position.
Okay, that's a good point. And I do like your suggestion, Wendy, especially getting the mobility managers involved when it comes to the hiring practices. And then that's something like MAG can like send out to the mobility managers to say, hey, because that seemed like to honestly be one of the common themes we've heard is, again, the drivers. And then Wendy, thank you very much. Trying to get an estimate kind of on what we can do for, you know, what's basic preventive maintenance, what is that cost, so we can have a better idea in the future. Great ideas. Great ideas. Any other comments?
Joan Freeman, City of Scottsdale. No, thank you, Wendy. That you hit a lot of things on the head. So I appreciate your comments.
Excellent. All right, anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Didi and Hezekias, let's review the committee scores.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dudley. So
if I may go over a couple
Yes.
items first. Thank you, Chair and members, Vice Chair, members of the committee, for this opportunity, for the interview opportunity. This provides our agency that experience of describing their requests and their agency, where a lot of times they don't have that opportunity, again, to present to a major committee like this. So thank you so much. I also took note, and thank you, Wendy, Joan, and Nancy for your comments, and Vice Chair Dudley. I did take notes of some of the concerns from the applicants, such as staffing shortages, and not only for the agencies, but the companies that they work with, such as, you know, the car repair place. That is something that has Winnie had noted that we, that MAG and our mobility managers are going to look into. So thank you for that comment. Also, regarding PM, the preventive maintenance, thank you, Wendy, for bringing that up, and Nancy and Joan, I think. As Wendy had noted, we are looking at preventive maintenance and trying to provide some additional guidelines regarding the agencies and the request. We're going to also bring in the mobility managers to help with that. So next year we can provide some guidelines in our handout, in our application handbook. So thank you for that. And vehicle cost. When we submit our priority listing and it runs through our committee process, we do note on the recommendations that all costs are estimate until final procurement. So as Wendy know, as we all know, the vehicle costs are keep rising, and we really don't know what would be available and what is the final cost until Wendy, and thank goodness for your staff and Wendy's, you know, diligent work on this, that we do get final procurement when we receive those vehicles. So thank you so much on that. Also, if there were to, and as Chair Williams had noted, a lot of our agencies did provide really good interviews, and MAC staff noted that there were 2 agencies that would be a really good example of having an effective interview. And I believe they were the Opportunity Tree and Benevilla, I believe. So we would like to use that as an example next year, possibly during our training, to show our applicants of what a good interview is. I think they followed the guidelines of just providing a very brief overview, but they did describe how the request is providing services for their agencies, and they definitely went over the different programs that they would utilize those requests. To review, there were 42 project requests that were up for discussion. Estimated funding available under 5310, we did receive final apportionments a couple of weeks ago. For the Phoenix Mesa urbanized area, we do have 5.1 million in apportioned to our region, and not including the carryover, which we'll go over later. After this, we did receive about 4.6 in federal request. To summarize, after years of refining this process, the committee has developed the following parameters. Agencies can request 5 vehicles. Agencies not meeting 70 points would not move forward for the awarding. And I'm happy to say we have all agencies that met that criteria. 5310 operating type projects on the first round were at 125 increments, and the percentage based on the ranking until flow funding is suspended. We are federally required to award 55% to capital projects. I would very much like to thank Ezekias for coordinating the final scores and our interviews at this time. So thank you, Ezekias, for your support on this. And as you can see, Ezekias has pulled up the final scores with funding. I would also like to thank the City of Phoenix for reviewing the project request and the funding and the total funding available. So if we can go forward, and I will hand this off to Ezekias and Wendy to review the matrix. And if we can have that just a little bit larger, it's a little hard to see. So thank you.
Thank you, Didi. Is it better to see now?
That's why I also logged on to my computer more than just my phone, the larger
You know,
screen.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You can definitely see it.
All right, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you so much. All right, so as Didi just mentioned, the first apportionment goes through capital. So here, what you can see right now is the same structure of your scoring sheets. So you see the applicant name, the application type, the project detail, and the amount requested. In your spreadsheets, they were in alphabetical order. Here they are already showing in order according to the final scores. Then after that, we have the total scores given by all of the committee members, because some of the agencies receive less scores due to the amount of members that abstained from scoring some of the applications. We do divide that by the number of the scorers and give a point average for for each of the applications, and that's how the applications are being ranked, is on that points average, not in the total points. So here are the agencies listed by the ranking based on that points average. The first column after that, starting with the gray and blue area, are for all the capital allocations first. So you'll see that all of the operating requests will stay gray, and then the allocation will be given by the blue on the capital requests. I will not go into detail on each one of them, but I do want to show at the end, based on the committee's procedures of allocating 60%, being a 5% above the 55 minimum requirement of the FTA. On that 60% based only on the apportionment, this is not considering the rollover of funding amounts from last year, which the city of Phoenix can provide more details on that. So based on that 60%, we have 3.107 million available for allocation. Calculating all of the capital requests, we have 2.760 million in requests, which leaves about $346,000 remaining available for capital requests. So this is the capital allocation first. Then
Let me
as
ask,
Didi,
Didi,
yes, go ahead.
let's
Go
ask
ahead, Matt.
questions of the committee. Does everyone understand how that capital allocation got to where it is compared to what we have? So we have 3.1 million available. That's not including the rollover from last year, correct, Hezekias?
Yes.
And so with our interviews for the last 2 days, we did not make it to that 3.107 million. We only made it to 2.760. So we'll have a rollover for next year of 346 million. But some of the rollover for this year is going.
1,000, yes.
Yeah, that's all right. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that one.
So yeah, this is Nancy. Sorry, I'm new. I'm gonna probably ask a lot of questions. So is that typical
that's
to
okay.
have? Is that typical to have a remaining balance, or is it just because of what's been going on?
This is Wendy. I can help with that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks.
Of the remaining, it didn't used to happen that way, but with the designation of this, the remaining available is only for the capital portion, the traditional capital portion. Since we are required by FTA to fund 55% of our total apportionment towards those traditional capital projects. And we have only estimated costs for the vehicles, and we used to estimate higher than to make sure that we could cover the cost of the vehicle. And then once those vehicles were awarded, then they dropped down, and we were dipping below our 55%. So that's why we raised it to the 60. I wanted to clarify that so that when we do actually fund the actuals of the vehicle, that we're still above the 55%. The remaining available is because in recent years, we increased the amount of the award of our allocation from 3.5, I think you said, Dee Dee. Now we're at 5.1. We increased our amount by 40%. Even last year, because of COVID, we didn't give out as much funding. There wasn't as many people asking for like new vehicles because they weren't using it. They weren't operating service. So things were kind of stagnant and we got less requests. So we still have funding available from last year that we need to fund towards the 55%. And then this year we're going to have not only that 346,000 remaining available, we also have that rollover from last year, which is approximately about that amount. So we're going to have 700,000 on top of what we get next year to give away under that 55% category. So it's going to be increasingly harder for us to, if we only get the same amount of average requests each year, we're going to need to get creative in order to spend down that 55% unless we have an increase in ask, a broadening of the projects. One of the things we're looking at for the future, we've asked MAG to look at doing another review on the amount that's being given to mobility managers and see if that amount should be increased. That was established like 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And the $45,000, we're saying, hey, have times changed? Is there a cost of living increase or a change in that? So can we look at that? We're looking at expanding, the definition, at least in giving that information to the 5310 folks that are using vehicles. How can we expand on the PM? So we're looking for alternative ways to utilize the 55% to spend that down. I'm even looking at other, project ideas that come out of the circular that say, hey, does this qualify? We talked about, the brokerage idea as something that we're looking at. There's just, if it continues and our projects stay the same, we're going to have money sitting on the table, and we as a region and me as the grant manager certainly don't want that. So we're monitoring that and trying to figure out new ways. So it is kind of common more recently than not. Does that help?
Yeah, that's helpful. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, I'd like to add a comment to Nancy's question. In the past, we have had more requests than we had available funding. Again, with the IIJA increase of 40%, we did jump up from 3.1 to 5.1. We did see requests go down due to COVID, but I know a lot of the agencies have noted that they are starting to increase their services to the consumers and starting to pick up back their transportation service program. So we may see an increase of requests next year. Thank you.
And then just for those who are pretty new to this, so you'll see though in the capital side, the 55%, when you look over into column N, unlike the operational cost, which then is more of a percentage, you'll just see the straight ask. For instance, right there, you see Mark Community Resources. They are there at the bottom at 75. However, since it is the capital, that number just goes straight over into that column for the allocation, where the operational side is more of a percentage based. And I'm going to stay in my lane and I'll let Hezekiah explain it. He's kind of already explained it a little bit already.
Thank you, Matt. So Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, now that we've gone through the capital allocation, then we go to the operating allocation. And as Didi mentioned, the first pass of funding allocation is based on 125,000 increments times the score that they received on their application. Or instead of 125,000, if they have requested less than that, then we will use that amount times their score. So as you can see here, For example, as Valley Metro East Valley right choice request was above the 125,000 for request, we use that 125 times their score, and we come to this first pass of allocation, and the same repeats to all of them. Here's an example of one that does not go above 125,000. Foothills Caring Corps. They have 63,000, so that is the number that is used to multiply by their score and give the first pass of allocation. So we go down now only in the operating requests to allocate their fundings. After the first pass, there were still money left. So what happens at that moment after the first pass is that we go back to a second pass. On that second pass, instead of using that 125,000 that the committee have agreed on doing for the first pass, we do the remainder of the amount available, of the amount requested times the score again. So that's why we subtract this amount to this amount to make it easier for you to understand. So we do column F minus column K, and then multiply that result by their scores again, and it gives that result. So we did it all again to all of the other applications as well. And we get the final apportionments. All of those were able to be apportioned using that math, except the last of the operating request, which was Valley of the Sun YMCA. If we use that math for Valley of the Sun YMCA, they would receive 23,937. However, that would go above the 30% that the committee agreed for operating requests. So instead, they get the remainder of the amount, which is 21,427 for a full allocation of the operating requests amount of 30%, leaving them with some percentage of the total requests for all of the applicants.
All right. And another perspective is just like we mentioned kind of in the committee is if you are below 70, you're not going to be even considered, but everybody is above 70%. That's correct.
Yes.
And then as a case, let's just go to the top and just show everybody how that kind of works. You kind of already mentioned that. So for instance, Valley Metro, their application PTF alternative, East Valley Ride Choice ranked #1. So their amount requested was 540,000. So we will then take 125,000 times point. What I'll do, like if you're doing it in your office, times 0.965, and that'll give you the 120,625. We go through the rest of the scores. We know we're going to have a remaining balance. So then for that next pass for operating allocation, what we'll do is then you take 540,000 minus that 120,625. I'm going to do that right now on my computer and make sure I get this right. And then we will get 419,375. And then we'll take that 419,375 times 0.965, and that'll get you the 404,697. So then you'll take that 404,697 plus the 120,625, and presto, there is the 525,322, which equates 525,000 out of their 540,000 request. So, and then there's the hidden row of what that percentage is. So,
yes.
So yeah, it's a pretty easy calculation, and a calculation that is taken. It seemed quite a few years to finally get to a process that is in place that was accepted by the region. So I really do appreciate Hezekias, because this used to take half a day to get these numbers. So it looks like you have it down to a science now.
Chair, this is Wendy. in essence, if we kind of break it down, I'm kind of a bottom line person, and I don't know if this description would be helpful for anybody, but it's helpful for me the way that I look at it. Everyone that is getting operating assistance is not getting fully funded in this scenario. They are only getting fully funded to the percentage of their score. So it's based on their score. It comes off a little bit percentage wise differently based on the amount of the, like if you saw the Valley Metro only gets 97% of their funding and some places lower get 99% of their funding, it works out a little bit differently based upon that. But ultimately, when I saw how this was going to play out, that because we are allocating the 60%, to the capital in order to make sure that we're meeting our 55%. Ultimately, some of the other remaining funding, I think, Hezekiah, do you remember the amount totally that was not funded spread throughout these projects? Was it about 50,000 or 30,000?
It was about 50,000.
About 50,000. So, one thing that I know we normally do the 60%. I thought that an alternative might be, and I asked Hezekiah if he would look at this in terms of, instead of funding the 60% on the vehicles, to fully fund the projects on the operations side and not do the allocations, or not, anyway, funding the scores or funding the projects at the 59% versus allocating the full 60%, I believe gets us to the point where we are, doesn't it, where we're fully funding the operation projects?
Yeah, so this is the scenario that you asked me to run for you, Wendy. And in this scenario, instead of going, and let me just go back here, instead of going on that calculation based on the score, in this one, we're just fully funding the same way that we did with the capital. We're doing with the operating at a fully funding all the operating requests, which leaves us with, instead of a 30%, it's a 31.02%. And it's $52,000 more.
Okay, so in essence, if we altered our percentages by 1% and funded at the 59% to give us a 4% cushion in terms of the vehicle overage costs, we wouldn't have to not fully fund the operations projects. That is an option that we have. However, I know it's easier math-wise, but I would still like to present it in the way that we do the 125,000 pass and do it that way. We still wind up fully funding everybody, but I would do it based upon the committee's percentage that we have, our process, the way our methodology. I would still do it that way to show them that we're not totally changing our methodology. We're just lowering the allocation to ensure we meet our 55% by 1%.
Chair, members of the committee, Vice Chair, if I may make a comment.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, both Ezekias, and thank you, Wendy, for looking at these funding scenarios. As Wendy stated, federally, we're required to do the 55% for capital request. It was a committee guideline or parameters that we did the 60% to ensure that we didn't award half of a vehicle. For this scenario, definitely, if we went to the 59%, we are within the guidelines to do that. We do. Again, thank you for this scenario. We do want to spend. It would be advantageous for us to spend down as much of our apportioned funding on this. Again, we are only federally required to do the 55%. The committee provided that guideline previously just so that we were ensured to get to the 55% and not award half of a vehicle if that were the case. Thank you.
Okay. Could you go to the top, Hezekias, with that spreadsheet? Because so that gives pretty much all the operational. I'm just looking at the operational. Everybody would get what they requested. I know just in the past, thinking about like the percentage sides on the operating side of it was kind of more, that was more of the peanut butter approach, which I know people really kind of did not like, and that we wanted to try to make sure that if you're doing an application and you're getting the points, that you're going to be rewarded a little more. I know that
And I
was
want to mention that, Wendy, I did create that one that does use the first allocation based on the committee's procedure, and then just use the remainder to get to the same amounts of the one that I showed previously.
Perfect. I would just prefer, if we are altering anything, we still stick to as close to our methodology as possible, to avoid those questions. It works out the same way, but if we're following the methodology, we're still giving that preference to the people that have the scores and giving them the most first, and going down the line that way. It works out that we do have enough funding if we only use a 4% buffer instead of a 5%, that everybody gets the most funding and we are giving out the most. So, in my opinion, I like that, but I just wanted to look at what the difference was, and we're talking $50,000, and in terms of a $1 million allocation, that is very minor.
Chair, this is Nancy. I have another question.
Oh, go ahead.
So there's no policy that states that we have to be 60/40. It can be a 59/31. There is no policy stating we have to stick to that. Is that what I hear?
Correct. The policy is 55%.
Okay. Gotcha.
And
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I guess my only concern would be whether or not it goes back and forth year to year, if that's going to, I guess, rub people the wrong way, like not knowing exactly how we're going to do that, or would that come across as not having some not stability, but I guess I'm just having concerns, because once you go in that direction, it's kind of hard to then go back to a 60/40 split. I don't know. That's my only question, is how do you think that people would react to changing? And then if we needed to go back, would they be okay with that?
Chair, this is Robert. Can
Go
I?
ahead, Robert.
Okay, the issue here is what's required by the federal government is 55%, right? So that 5% that we're playing with is within the options that we have. It's not changing anything. So that when Wendy allows this, when we actually purchase, when Wendy purchases the vehicles, that there is this allowance on that 5% that might not be spent. So I think we're still within our purview on what we do with with that 5%.
Correct.
The actual premise of this is, we as a committee are not actually awarding dollars. We're putting together a priority listing that tells us in the order in which Phoenix gives out those funds. So as the DR. So the 60% is a guideline which we requested to ensure we met our 55%, but it's not an absolute. So our request is that the committee give more than 55% to the traditional projects, and hold that money in there to ensure that later we can award more funds to make sure we hit our 55%. in future years, we can fund other traditional projects and fund them through this year's grant to make sure we hit those marks. So that's the premise behind it, is that we're getting your methodology in which we can award those funds. So as wearing my grant manager hat, it's advantageous to us as Phoenix to spend down as much as we possibly can and apply for as much as we can. So that's, the 60% was a guideline. It's not an absolute. In we use 60% as the guide, but it could change, and it will change year to year. And what we want to avoid is those unintended consequences. So I understand what you're saying too. We want to avoid the unintended consequences looking like we're vacillating back and forth. But if our committee is, looking at, we need to just fund above 55 to cover those vehicle, project savings that we're going to get by spending less on vehicles than what we originally awarded to ensure we hit our 55%. As long as we're still going to cover that gap, then that was the purpose behind what we were doing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Chair, this is Nancy. I just wanted to add on to my comment. I'm in support of spending down as much money as we possibly can, and knowing that we have 5% to have a little bit of leeway with carry forward monies or additional federal funds that have been allocated to this process. Yeah, I think it's a great idea to try and spend that extra 1%.
Okay. Okay. What about the rest of the committee?
This is Nina Arredondo, but Chair and Vice Chair, I am in agreement with this as well.
Okay.
Joan Freeman, City of Scottsdale, I'm in total agreement.
Perfect. Okay.
This is David, City of Mesa. I agree as well.
Dave, good. All right. Robert, you were good, right? I think Robert was okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you, Robert.
Yeah, I agree. I think we have some flexibility.
Gives us some flexibility.
That's like the right idea.
Okay. And you said it was about, it'll take us down another, what'd you say, Wendy, about 50,000? Spend another 50,000 on it?
It's another 52,000.
52,000. Okay. Hey, it's a start, right?
We're going to have to get creative next year.
I know.
Very much so. And I've got some ideas.
All right. That's what I want to hear, Wendy and Dee Dee. Boy, oh boy, we need some ideas. This is a good first idea. I think it does help.
Matt, you say that now, Matt.
Just make sure Wendy doesn't and Dee Dee doesn't go to jail with this.
They won't. I'm sure they won't.
I've already got a call into FTA. We're going to remain above board on everything.
Okay, yeah. Who's that? Ariana, right? Yep, Ariana's in the region. So, yep, we can run it by them just to kind of see what it is. Okay. So it sounds like there's a committee consensus for approval using the 5310 allocation, using the 5931 allocation model. All right. Dee Dee or Phoenix?
Do we need a motion?
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely need a motion. I just want to make sure everybody is okay with that. Dee Dee, is that correct? Am I following the script correctly?
Yes, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, if I can summarize the consensus.
Yes, please.
Also, just to reiterate, at this point, the committee is approving or developing the project, Wendy had mentioned, the priority listing where we will allocate the funding. So I will summarize the consensus is to move forward projects utilizing the priority listing to base the grant awards until available funding is expended, carrying over any unexpended funding. So the motion is to recommend the priority listing of projects for the FY 2022 Section 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disability Program for the Phoenix Mesa Urbanized Area for approval by the MAC Regional Council to forward to the City of Phoenix Public Transit Department to submit to the Federal Transit Administration.
All righty. So with that, can I get a motion on that?
I support, I offer the motion.
All right.
You have
Robert
to, you have
Yabes.
to repeat it word for word if you're going to motion it.
It's recorded, right? Just run back the recording a little bit.
All right. So we have a motion for approval from the City of Tempe. Do I have a second?
This is David. I'll second.
All right, David, City of Mesa has seconded that. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Dee Dee, could you please do a roll call?
Chair, Vice Chair of the committee, I would also, it was already for consensus and discussion, but also utilizing, I would like to add utilizing the methodology as approved by the committee.
Okay. Robert, you're good with that?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, I would now like to do a roll call. If you can respond by yea or nay. Nina Arredondo.
Yay.
Carolyn Ballard. Todd Florence.
Yay. Yay.
David has seconded the motion. Vice Chair Dudley.
Yay.
Joan Freeman.
Yay.
Nancy Jackson.
Yay.
Wendy Miller.
Yay.
Chair Williams.
Yay.
Mr. Yabes provided the motion. And
Yay.
it is unanimous. Vice Chair.
All right, motion passes. Excellent. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 7, which is the request for future agenda items. Are there any other requested topics or issues of interest to consider for future agendas? Remember, topics and issues can only be requested for future agendas, but not discussed. All right, hearing none, I'm sure we'll come up with some in the future here, Dee Dee. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 8. It's comments from the committee. This is for information only. Does anyone have an announcement that they would like to make? Oh, I want to make an announcement. I know Nathan and I were both attended the ASTA conference a couple of weeks ago. There was a lot of discussion. I think there was with a lot of the rule providers talking about 5310. I think there was even 5310 discussions on that one. So definitely a lot of interest, not only in the state, but nationally with the funding that's coming in there. So just kind of like what you mentioned earlier, Wendy, looking for different ideas how to spend down these funds coming out of COVID. So I found that very exciting. So I know Dee Dee and Hezekiah were both there. Do you guys have anything to share?
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Yes, it was very interesting to hear statewide comments regarding the funding. At ASTA, there were Ray tell us what FTA staff were there. They did mention we did see the 40% jump and increase to our apportionments. The increase next year and for the next 4 years will be much lower, probably on the same trend as we've seen under the FAST Act. We did attend a couple of statewide meetings with our mobility managers, and ADOT did also say that they will be emphasizing preventive maintenance for their next application round. And also, we're happy to say that Ezekias went to a lot of RTAP, Regional Transportation Assistance Program, workshops, and got a lot of information regarding training opportunities that we can present to our stakeholders, our regional stakeholders. I did want to add at the statewide mobility management meeting that was held at ASTA, we did discuss has statewide discussion, the staffing shortages, and not only agency, as I noted, but with services such as mechanics. The mobility managers are trying to look at best practices of hiring and employing staff. I know NACOG is looking at partnering with high schools and possibly getting an internship at car repair shops. I wasn't sure what that was called, car repair shops. But they are also looking at how, other best practices and any other strategies that they can look at. So we are looking at all of these issues. It's not affecting only our agency, but it is affecting agencies statewide and in different regions. So we are all looking at that on a statewide basis. As Kia said, I will be attending CTAA in a couple of weeks. We are looking at best practices regarding hiring and retaining employment, but we are also, Wendy had asked us to look at what other states are doing with 5310, what other projects and different strategies that they are utilizing 5310 funding. So we are tasked with exploring that and researching that, and we will hopefully bring that back to you at the next meeting. So thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee.
Oh, thanks, Dee. Where's CTAA being held this year?
It is being held in Kentucky.
Kentucky. All right.
Never been.
Good old Kentucky. All right.
Chair,
Yes, Wendy.
Vice Chair. This is Wendy. I just wanted to also give you guys a quick update on our subrecipient training. We are continuing doing monthly trainings with all of our 5310 subrecipients on topics and that are relevant to them. ADA, we do, vehicle maintenance stuff. We do all kinds of different things, and we usually do a full 5310 training right before the applications come out, etc. One topic that is coming more and more prevalent is vehicle disposals. We have a lot of people, our subrecipients, their vehicles are meeting their useful life and they're needing to dispose of their vehicles. It's quite an in-depth process, especially with nonprofits, to go through meeting all the federal requirements of disposing of the vehicle, releasing liens, etc. So this upcoming next May 19th, I think it is. I might have the date wrong, but I can double check for you. But we are going to be going over the vehicle disposal process. One thing that's complicated a little bit is FTA changed the disposal process, and this might be helpful to the cities and transit folks that also are disposing of transit vehicles, because this applies to you as well. The federal government changed through the bipartisan infrastructure law how they calculate vehicles and the $5,000 threshold. So it used to be that you had to reinvest your funds in another transit project. FTA stops this. So up to $5,000 starting November 15th of 2021, all vehicle disposals beyond that point, you get to keep the first $5,000. So that $5,000 doesn't get retained by FTA or the 80% or 85% or whatever of the full amount. The first $5,000 goes back to the agency, and then anything above that $5,000 gets split in the federal local match percentage, and the federal percentage goes back to FTA, not to be reinvested in vehicles. So there's a change effective all vehicles being disposed of after November 15th. We're going to walk everybody through the general process of disposing of vehicles and answering their questions. But I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware we were still doing monthly trainings and that this was a hot topic, and to get the word out there that the program has changed a little bit.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. Chair
Robert?
Wendy, can you send the invite to all of us, or to me, or whoever's interested? Does that also apply to any equipment that was funded with FTA funds?
It does. It does. It is not just vehicles. It is federal assets. I think maybe what we could probably do is schedule something for the transit folks, because I'd rather not clog the thing up, because our processes for you guys are a little different. I think maybe what we'll do is maybe lead a discussion for recipients versus 5310 and do something similar, if that makes sense. I mean, you're welcome to listen and come and join, but if you're wanting to ask questions and participate, it might be easier if we split it out, because I know there's going to be a lot of 5310 questions.
Okay.
Thank you. I am more interested in the general thing, so not just 5310.
Right. And I
Right.
can send you out the page where they talk about how it's calculated differently now. So I can definitely send out the frequently asked questions about how it affects the disposal, so you guys have that. And then I'll ask our other folks to see if they can lead a discussion on how the new disposal process works for you guys.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Any other announcements from the committee?
Hey, I want to thank Wendy, everybody, Didi, and Hezekias for another job well done on this 5310 allotment process. Again, thank you.
Very much so. Also, I want to thank the committee, because I know everyone, this is not easy. Every year we seem to have more and more, and going over 46 applications is not easy, especially when you're new to this. I've been on this for 20 plus years now, and it's definitely a lot easier to grade than it was before, but I know it is a lot of time. So I really do appreciate everybody taking their time out to grade and to rank these applications. It is not easy, and definitely to Wendy, to Didi, to Hezekias, and to Dylan too. I know you're new on this one. Putting together a lot of time and effort to get these graded and the evaluations. And we really do appreciate it from the committee perspective of how much easier you make it on us after evaluating to go through the process and to set up the interviews with all these nonprofits. So it really is appreciated.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, we are going to move on to agenda item number 9, which is adjournment. So again, I appreciate everybody's time and effort into this one, and this meeting is now adjourned for this fiscal year. Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
And
Thanks, Matt. Thanks.
Enjoy
everyone.
your days.
Thank
All
you,
right.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Should I end the meeting now?
Yes, you can end it. Jeremy.
Okay,
Thank you
alright.
so much.